Hello there everybody, Sam's Trains here and welcome back to the railway. Recently I came up against a problem to solve and I'm not going to tell you what that problem was at this point because I don't want to give it away too soon. But I've decided to use my favourite solution to any problem, and that is to build a machine to solve it for me. So I've designed and 3D printed all of the parts, and I'm going to build it for you stage by stage on camera. And I want to see at what stage you can guess what the machine is for. So as soon as you think you know, pause the video and drop me a comment and we'll see who gets it right. Obviously, if you want to play along, don't look at the comments just yet because they'll probably give it away. But without any further ado, let me get started and let's start building the machine. Okay, stage one then. This is the main frame of the thing, and it'll be interesting to see if anyone's willing to hazard a guess based on just this alone. So it's got 3 columns, and these are designed to hold something, and then there are these racks which are long and have lots of holes in the top. I reckon that could be quite confusing, but anyway, that's the main frame. We need to start assembling. Okay, here is stage 2 then. This gives a little bit more of the story away. I've got 2 of these discs, and as you can see they've got pegs and holes on them, and then some mountings in the centre here. And to put onto those mountings, I've got these little brackets slash axles. So with that, I'm going to assemble these 2 discs. Right, so the axle piece goes through the centre of the large disc like that. And then I've got 4 screws to hold this in place, so that tells you that it needs to be quite strong. So let's put those in. First screw, second screw, third screw, and the 4th and final screw. So now that is very, very well on there. And we've got a little axle poking out the other end of this disc. And I've got a second one of these to assemble. Alright, so I've now got 2 of these discs with the axles on, and they do indeed need to be sandwiched together, which is a bit awkward to do. But there we go. Now we've got a reel. Can anybody guess what this is going to be for? And I've got some screw holes in the front of it here, and I need to put some screws into there to keep the 2 halves together. So it's going to take another 4 screws to do this, 1 at each corner. Put them in loosely to start with and then tighten them up, because it is very important that these 2 parts are fitted together flushly and completely parallel. That could be a clue. And if you haven't already guessed, the big disc that I've put together needs to rotate. So for that I've got these teeny tiny bearings which I'm going to fit onto the axles. So one on this side like that, and the other bearing needs to go on this side like that, and then they will sit onto the main frame. But I almost forgot, I'm going to put some little pieces of blue tack into the frame just to deaden vibration and make sure that it all runs nice and smoothly. So there we go, and with that I can now push the bearings into their slots. So they go in like that, and then I've got some caps to put on top of the bearings which I can then screw down on. Okay, and tighten those up. So now we've got a nice free spinning wheel. It's a bit like a flywheel, but that's not what it is. As you can see, it goes for a good long while. And then we have stage 3, which is to motorize this. So I've got a motor which sits here, and there's a little adapter on the end of this motor which interfaces with the axle, and that will allow the motor to drive the wheel round and round. And I have a top piece to the motor mount like that, which screws down in place using just 2 more screws. A lot of screws on this thing. And then there's another screw which goes into the top, and this just screws down gently on the top of the motor to fix it in that position. So now we've got a motor coupled up to my big flywheel looking thing. And that, I believe, is assembly finished. Now that it's built, it's time to reveal what this thing is actually for. So recently I released these wagons and I was super happy with how these turned out. If you're interested in these, check out the video up there. Now these were made mostly out of resin, but the wheels sat into this plastic sub-chassis, and that was because I thought the plastic would be more hard wearing than the resin so that it would last longer. But if I could do away with the plastic sub-chassis and just use a resin chassis, that would open up a lot of possibilities for me. It would mean that I could make the chassis more realistic, I wouldn't have to compromise them, and the savings in time and cost would allow me potentially to build bigger and better models without necessarily increasing the price. But I'm concerned that bearings made of resin will wear out too quickly, and that's where this machine comes in. This thing is designed to test whether that's true or not by simulating many hours of running in a relatively short space of time. Well, that's the idea anyway. I've not tested this fully yet, so let's hook it up and let's see if this will actually work. So here's the basic idea. This wheel has ridges on it which are gauged exactly so that they accept a wagon. And then this wheel is designed to spin the wheels of that wagon. But obviously if I put power to the wheel right now, the wagon's just going to drop off. So I've created these arms which have a channel in the bottom of them which matches the profile of these rails on the device, and these can slide along these rails like this. So what you do is you take the wagon, you center it at the top of the wheel like so, and then you push one of these arms across. You take a key and put that key into one of the holes which stops it there, and of course I've got one on the other side as well. So push that in, put some gentle pressure on the wagon, not too much, and then in goes the key. And now the wagon can't move. But these arms only stop the wagon moving horizontally. All of the vertical force is still taken by the axles, which is what I want. So with that, I can put some power to this and we'll see if we can spin up the wheels of this wagon. Right, so I'm all hooked up to a train controller and I'm about to apply power and we'll see what happens. Now, obviously there's no gearing in this mechanism. This disc is coupled directly to the motor, so it's going to go fast, and that's what I want because I want the wheels to spin quite quickly. So, is this going to work? Forwards direction. Off it goes. Accelerating up to a pretty alarming speed, and I've actually only got it on low power at the moment. But as you can see, it is causing the wagon's wheels to turn, and at a much faster rate than they would be if they were just in use on a model railway. So that raises some questions about the validity of testing wagons like this. First of all, obviously in a real scenario, the wheels would not be spinning at this kind of speed, which means there will be more friction here, there will be increased heat possibly, and potentially more wear as well. However, if I fully test a wagon like this and I don't observe any wear, then I can say with some certainty that in a real life scenario running much more slowly over the same distance, that there will be no wear there either. The other thing obviously is that this is sitting on a curve. It's not sitting on a straight piece of track as it really would be. So the force on the axle boxes applied by the axles is going to be kind of in this upwards diagonal direction, which does mean that the wear in this test setup won't be exactly the same as on a real model railway. But like I say, all of the weight of the wagon is still supported by the axle boxes, so again this should serve to test how much the axles are going to wear away the axle boxes. But the other thing I want to know is how fast is this going? Every second that goes by, how far is this wagon effectively travelling? Well, I'll stop this because I've got an idea or two on how to test that. Right, so if I pop the wagon off, I'm going to put a piece of yellow tape just here on the edge of the wheel. And then by filming this at high speed, I can analyse the footage, figure out how long it takes for this disc to do one rotation at the speed that I'm comfortable with. And using that, I can figure out the speed with which this is spinning, and then I can calculate how much track this wagon would cover per second. So with that, let me set up the camera for high-speed recording, and we will see how quick this spins. Here goes. Okay, so here's the footage I shot. This was filmed at 119.88 frames per second, and I've counted the number of frames it takes for one rotation of the disc, and that came out at 12 frames. So if we assume that the frame rate is 120, that divides quite nicely. That means that one spin of the wheel takes 0.1 seconds. Apologies for my handwriting in advance. Now, because I designed the disc, I know that the circumference of it is 0.31 meters or 31 centimeters. That is the distance the wagon travels per single rotation. And because it takes 0.1 seconds to do a single rotation, we can say that the disc will do 10 times rotations per second. So 0.31 times 10, that is 3.1 meters in every second. So that's meters per second minus 1. So let's see how many meters it will do in an hour. So we'll do 3.1 times 60, that takes us to minutes, times another 60, that takes us to hours. So that is 11,160 meters per hour. And then obviously if we divide that by 1,000, that will give the value in kilometers per hour, which is 11.16 kilometers per hour. And if we convert that to miles per hour, is it 0.621? Yeah, 621. That will give us miles per hour, which is 6.93 miles per hour. Well, that's quite fast for a model railway wagon, isn't it? But I need to put this into realistic terms. So let me measure my model railway, see what the distance of one lap is, and let's also see what kind of speed I generally run trains at to give an idea of how much time this device will save. So I think for the purposes of this, I'm going to assume that the layout is a rectangle. Obviously, it's not a rectangle, it's got curves and such. But I can't be bothered to try and calculate the flipping circumference of all the curves. So let's just assume that it's a rectangle, and henceforth I shall refer to these values as approximate. So the width of the layout is approximately 329 centimeters. Okay, let's do the length then. This is a slightly more awkward one to measure, but if we're looking for approximate values, this should be okay. Hopefully this won't ruin the track. So the length of the layout, people always ask this, so finally I'll be able to answer this question, is 445 centimeters. Alright, so two widths is 658, two lengths is 890. Let's add those together. That should be 1548, and then divide that by 100 for meters. So that means one lap of the layout is approximately 15.48 meters. So let's calculate how long it would take the wagon to do one lap of my layout at the speed that my wheel turns. So that will be 15.48 divided by 3.1, that's the speed. That means it would take 4.99 seconds, which is roughly equal to 5 seconds. So 5 seconds riding on my device will be approximately one lap of my layout. So let's find out now how long one lap of my layout would usually take. So I've picked out a loco that I think runs at a fairly typical speed, and I usually run my engines at about 50%. So I've got my controller set at 50. So I'm going to start the loco and this timer at the same time, and we'll see how long it takes to complete a lap. So 3, 2, 1, go. And now we have to wait for it to get back to this specific point, and then I'll stop the timer and we'll know how long it takes. So yeah, now I guess we got to wait. So how's it going? You all right? Having a nice time? I'm having a nice time. I love all this sort of designing and engineering, and then sort of physics and calculations afterwards. I just love it. I apologise if it's a touch on the boring side, but I'm having a great time. Weather all right where you are? It's been very nice and sunny here recently. It's become quite hot and unbearable up the loft actually. Yes. Running out of things to say now. Had any good meals out recently? Chloe and I went and got some lovely pizzas the other day, but I'll have to tell you about them another time because that is it. So there you have it. One lap was 53.87 seconds. Alright, so it took 53.87 seconds, and we'll divide that by 5. So we can say that this goes over 10 times the speed. Awesome. So if I left my contraption running for 1 day, it would be the equivalent of 10 days running on the real thing, which is over a week. So yeah, I think that's probably a fair amount of time. A whole week would be 7 times 24 hours, the equivalent of about 168 hours. So maybe if I ran it for 2 days over a weekend, that could be 336 hours of effective testing. I think if a wagon can pass that test without any appreciable wear, then we should be good to go on the resin bearings. But anyway, that is it. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed that. Any thoughts on this, please do let me know. But for me personally, I'm really happy with this. It's a good test unit, which I think is going to be invaluable in the future. And of course, this is going to help me to develop new models, so do keep an eye on the channel, because as soon as those are ready, I will be posting them on here. But for now, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one. Alright, cheers folks, you take care.